So I'm really excited we actually followed George's panel here, because what we're going to really talk about is how to create trends instead of chasing them. So it's a very good segue into talking about leading these things versus sort of chasing them, and how to understand your consumers in a way to make meaningful action. So for myself, I'm Jenna Berg. I am the head of brand marketing, creative content, and media for Motel 6. I've been there for about 5 years. So I really resonate deeply with that nostalgia brand and the value proposition, all those different things. So what a great first panel. So as we start, because I said, brought a prop, we are all clients in this room, right? Yeah, I told them about this. I didn't show them. So I'm going to ask everyone to take off, my panelists here, to take off our client hat. We're putting on our creative hat today. We're going to talk about how to do this. This is a gift from my advertising agency. But I want to give each of our panelists just a quick moment to introduce themselves and really tell me a little bit more about what it means to to create trends versus chasing them. And I do have my notes on the phone. I am not up here texting. I am a millennial and I don't own a printer. So I appreciate you all. So Deanna, will you go first and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit what this means to you?
Mic on. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Deanna Marzillo, National Sales. I cover brand partnerships for RhythmInfluence. We are one of the most trusted influencer marketing agencies in the U.S. Very proud of that. And I say trusted because we have like an 85% retention rate year over year. Our clients keep coming back to us. They keep telling us how much they love working with us. You're so easy to work with. Your process is great. And honestly, I think the trend is we listen to our clients. I think it is truly as simple as that. We're not trying to make them change the way that they do things. We work in a consultative manner. We want everyone to feel like they're in the driver's seat and has a voice at the table.
Awesome. Jake?
Speaking of nostalgia brands, I think we both have it covered. I'm Jake Schneider. I lead marketing for Gold's Gym, one of the most recognizable brands in our category. Turning 60 this year. Unbelievable. From a trend standpoint, I think one industry that experiences the ups and downs of trends is health and wellness and fitness, and how we have realigned the brand over the past 2 years is to really go back to our roots and understanding and looking in the mirror, speaking of a Michael Jackson slide in the background, the person in the mirror, and understanding who and what we are and what we mean from an experience standpoint to our customers and our members.
Yeah, great. Marissa?
Yes. Hi, Marissa Eddings. I get to work with the best brand marketing organization in the world at 7-Eleven. I think some of them are out here. Yay! So 7-Eleven is about to be 100 years old. We started in 1927 as an ice house, and one of the ice house managers noticed that customers also had to go somewhere else to get bread, and somewhere else to get their eggs, and somewhere else to get their milk. And so he asked the owner at the time if he could start to carry some of those staples just to make his customers' lives easier. And out of that, the convenience store industry was born. We also were the first to put coffee in to-go cups. And if to-go coffee is not probably the biggest trend over the last 60 years, I don't know what is. And then I don't know, do you guys know what tomorrow is? Woohoo! 7-Eleven Day, Slurpee Day. So I have on my Slurpee Day shirt. We started that trend about 20-ish years ago, 25 years ago. So we have a history of firsts. And I would say creating those trends and being on the front of those trends it's in our brand DNA. It's really who we are. And we've started to do that more recently from a cultural standpoint. And we'll talk more about this, but we saw people taking pictures of their cars in front of our stores. And we started to post that in social. And that content was performing 10x or the average of our other content. So we were like, okay, this is interesting. And we stuck to that strategy. And about a year later, a TikTok video featuring where someone randomly made a video of our Instagram account, posted it on TikTok. And a week later, our Instagram followership had doubled. And there was an entire community that was planning a national car meetup at 7-Elevens. So we are continuing to do that, but we're really looking at how we can tap into cultural trends trends and create those cultural trends.
Okay, follow-up question. What does 7-Eleven have planned for the 100th? Have you guys started thinking about it yet?
We're in the planning phases now, so stay tuned because it's going to be big.
Nice. I always joke. I was married on 11/7, so I always tell people opposite Slurpee Day.
Reverse
Slurpee Day in Europe.
Yes, or in Australia. Yeah, exactly. Slurpee Day in the rest of the world.
So we talked a little about staying authentic, being self-aware enough to kind of know when your people are. So with the speed of culture, especially in TikTok cycles and how fast everything moves these days, how do you first and foremost be prepared for those moments when it's right for us to jump in, but decide that it is a moment in which to lean in versus lean out? Because should you be chasing this trend or should you be leading it? Is it right for your brand? So let's go with Jake to start this one.
Yeah, I think when we're evaluating opportunities, right? Because everyone probably has experienced at some point somebody walking in and saying, hey, I saw this on TikTok, let me forward it to you, right? And then how are we going to attack it? For us, in resetting what we do, we look at, kind of similar to Marcus's point, the brand is not who we say it is, it's who our audience and who our members say it is, and how they feel about us and what we're providing in that experience. And so we look at experiences in a way that, how is the audience going to see themselves in it, or feel seen and validated by it? Because a lot of what we do is that kind of that validation, right? You go into a gym, you're consistent with it, you see the results, you're feeling good, and it's a place that you want to keep coming back to. And so we kind of view the noise as everything that everyone is kind of reacting to because they feel like they have to, as opposed to, is it endemic to our brand and who our audience is?
Dan, you want to elaborate on that at all?
Well, working with creators, we really try to just tell various brands across all categories, listen to your audiences, so exactly what you were saying, but understand how things make them feel. I think when you understand how a trend makes someone feel, like you don't want to just be reactive and tap into every single trend, because then you're just oversaturating the market and ultimately your brand just really probably won't make any sense. So figuring out what makes sense for your specific brand. I had the opportunity late last year to work with the Queen of Christmas, and it was for her.
Talk about nostalgia.
It was for her It's Time video, and she's somebody who does not just want to work with any brand. And so it was finding the right brand, the right moment, the right cultural trend that she taps into every year when she says, it's time. And so the marriage of those two came to life in like the most like harmonious moment that was awesome and garnered crazy, like 200 million views, I think we're up to right now across social platforms. But year over year, we're asked like, oh, can you find an advertiser for this opportunity? And I'm not just going to throw something at a wall and see if it sticks. So it had to be the right advertiser, the right moment in time. And it worked, and we're really proud of it. And we won a Webby Award for that opportunity. So check it out on social. But just listening to the audiences and also the creators too, what they're trying to accomplish as well.
So I'm going off script, but I have a question.
Yes.
So when we talk about those types of things and we're like, oh, it has to be the right person for the right moment, we all intuitively know that as brand marketers, but it's so hard when you get in there to like just let the reins off and let these creators do what they're great at. So what is your advice for the brand marketers in the room to sort of let the creators do what they're good at and sort of still protect the brand, get the message across, but do it in a way that's authentic to the audience and allow them to establish that meeting or that as we talked about in the last session. So what would be your advice to the brand marketers in the room?
Yeah, I mean, you have to put on safety belts, right? Because creators are human beings. We don't want them going rogue. That would be, we've had that happen. So I think it's just a matter of controlling the controllables. If you try to control too much, then it's going to have the opposite effect. But from the get-go, when we get an opportunity, we want to take the time to get on the phone. We're old school. Let's get on the phone and let's talk things through, because we know from the time of like initial ideation to the time something is actually going to be executed, a lot changes through culture, through specific social moments in time. So we want to make sure we're understanding who that brand's audience is, the creators that we're using, and how we tell 9 times out of 10 we tell creators, don't just work with a brand because you just want to work with a brand. Work with brands that make sense to you too, because audiences are going to sniff out the BS. I mean, I think we all can agree on that. So, with exclusivity, usage rights, we want to make sure that that's all clear, and that is those safety belts that we put in place to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, great advice. So going back to being a trendsetter, and 7-Eleven obviously being the first brand in the space, coffee cups with the cars and everything we already talked about. Can you talk a little bit, Marissa, about what it really means to be a trendsetter? Is it the instinct, insight, timing, budget, or something else?
Yeah, this is a little cliche, but I think it's really where strategy and preparedness meet opportunity, right? So we did a lot of real foundational brand strategy work about 5 years ago, really understanding who our customers were, the role that we played in their lives, and what that meant for our brand, storytelling frameworks as well. So that work had been done about 5 years ago, and then really putting the processes in place and making sure roles and responsibilities were really clear so that when opportunities do come up, we can evaluate them. We have very specific criteria that we look at. Brand fit is one, but also it has to be something that is uniquely 7-Eleven. If someone else could do it and it be just as successful, it's probably not really for us. And so we have those criteria that we think about. We have a process in place, and we make sure we understand what's happening outside of our 4 walls, right? Because that's where the opportunity lies. And when you find kind of that perfect fit, it's about moving with speed and quality to kind of get out into the marketplace. But to me, without that preparedness piece, the opportunity, you're not going to be able to nail it.
Yeah, and because I'm insatiably curious, and she had a Joe Burrow jersey behind her on our prep call, I was obviously asking about it. So you told a great story about how this all came together with that activation. Can you share that with the audience?
So as close as Jamar Chase. But very close.
I'm from Cincinnati too. Like, that's so bad. But I am a Cleveland Browns fan, so I try not to just ignore all football.
Yeah, no, I love this story, so I'm happy to tell it. A couple of years ago, Jamar Chase, who is the wide receiver for the Bengals, had played a game where he was open the whole time, waiting to receive the ball. That's his job, and it was not being passed to him. And so in a post-game interview, he made the comment that he's always open. There was an expletive in there. I will not say what his exact quote, but let's just say he was pretty angry, and he wanted to make sure everyone knew he's always open. So the next day, he posted a picture of 7-Eleven on his X account. That's all he said, 7-Eleven. And we mobilized very quickly. Our sports marketing team and our culture and social media team saw it. By the next morning, they had a plan. By the next weekend, we had a deal with him. He actually went out on the field wearing a 7-Eleven bling necklace, which, by the way, you're not allowed to do. He could have been fined, but he did it anyway. And we got coverage of that. And the media value out of that was astronomical. I mean, we do not advertise during NFL games. And so to get that kind of coverage during an NFL game, because we saw the opportunity, we had the processes in place, we knew the people, the roles and responsibilities on our team to get it done, we had an entire campaign within a week. And then we've continued to work with him and take that campaign even further. We've had merchandise. We've continued to work with him on opportunities while he is on the field or off the field to reflect our brand. And it was just so authentic. I mean, it really embodied who he was, to say, I'm always open, show 7-Eleven, and be able to capture on that, that opportunity. And without that preparedness and that strategy, I mean, that moment would have passed us by for sure.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing about having that prepared strategy and knowing that is that you have the senior leadership buy-in to mobilize on these things quickly, because I think we can all attest in this room that sometimes you we hear this all the time, do something new, but prove to me it's going to work before you do it, right? And it's like, well, how do we sort of figure out if this is the right thing to do and to kind of get those senior leadership buy-in. So, Jake, can you talk to us a little bit about how you put something out there and prove that it's going to stick, and how you get that internal buy-in for such a bold move?
Yeah, I think one, structure frees creativity and preparedness, right? And so there is, I love George's quote of kind of sales overnight, build a brand over time, because it is very true even when you're dealing with a 100-year-old brand and a 60-year-old brand. And when I came on board 2 years ago, we didn't have all of those processes in place. And we were looking at a way that we could, as fitness was coming back into the kind of prioritization of people across all demographics coming out of 2020, that, what do we do that's going to push the brand forward? And what do we do and balance that with how we grow membership and other opportunities like personal training? And it all came down to the experience. And so a really great case in point, which it kind of seems obvious, but we had to do our check down list, is that we worked with Mr. Beast and Jimmy most recently on what became his second most watched piece, which is the 100-pound challenge. They came to us very early on and they said, hey, we would love to work with you. And we looked back at who is authentic to the brand. Jimmy had stopped by Venice several times. He worked out with Arnold. He was on his own fitness journey, and he would cover that. And so it aligned with a lot of the things that we're doing, but we really wanted to know the story and the purpose behind it and how we were going to make it. It actually took almost 2 years to make because of new and different opportunities for their team as well. But once we finally did, it was a check down of answering the questions of, okay, how many memberships do you think this is going to sell? And I said, I don't think it's going to sell any. And we should approach it that way. There are different brand elements that we need to do to prove out. But it's the system on how do we capitalize on it? No, we're not going to capitalize on it, knowing the nature of some of the content. We're going to let it breathe and be the brand that is strength and fitness forward. And then we're going to work on other elements that say, how do we surround and support this? Where does this fit in the dance that we have to do against visibility and opportunity and experience?
Yeah, and how did, after that activation was completed, did you then report back into those internal stakeholders and say, hey, this worked, right? Because then you build credibility and trust with your senior leadership, and the rope gets or the leash gets a little longer every time. Can you talk about sort of that feedback loop or how you shared that back?
This is where I turn my hat back around to client. And I have, almost 10 years of agency experience, and Luz knows that I will come with, here is why it worked and why it matters and everything else. But working back on a plan to say, okay, knowing that this isn't going to be direct response or conversion based, and that we're not necessarily as familiar as we need to be in those areas, here's why it mattered. Here's why it impacted. And it was everything from, holy expletive, Gold's Gym built Mr. Beast a whole gym for this, all the way down to I'm inspired by this person Googling my Gold's Gym location. And it also helped with our partner relationships. We partnered with Matrix, who is one of our providers of equipment, to help develop this out with them. And so they get to use it as a case study on how we partner together to work. So there was exponential value that the next time we go to build, say, our flagship location in the Austin market, which just opened last week, that we can focus on, okay, this is an opportunity for more visibility with partnership with Matrix and other partners. And now we have a lot more connected meetings from an operational end on how we can attack and improve the overarching experience for the brand.
Yeah, I certainly believe that the people we market hardest to are our senior leaderships, right? Because we have to build a case study for them and get them to buy into what we're doing as well, not just with the owners out there. So.
Someone else told me life's a pitch, and one continuous pitch.
If anyone wants to get me another hat, I'll have that one too. Okay, so kind of continuing on that thread of thought. So when you're talking about creating these trends intentionally and you're probing for KPIs or team structures, what types of tools are you using, like social listening, predictive modeling, listening, creator signals, and what's actually working for you. And I'd like to put this one at you, Deanna, because you're in that creator space and you're looking at all those. And it's so interesting because I think we can all agree that the focus swings from let's put all the money in performance, and then we're going to put all the money in brand, and right now we're sort of in this performance swing because when we go into recessions, everyone wants to see KPIs, and it's back to prove to me it's going to work. And I'm hesitant to put money into these things if I cannot see a direct return on ad spend. And so we have to build this case study as marketers to help build senior leadership to buy into these types of things. So can you talk about the metrics outside of return on ad spend that you're really focusing on to show success?
Yeah, I think, we have internally, we have an entire measurement suite that we tap into. So that in itself helps, right? Showing all different types of metrics. And at the end of a campaign, we love to give a client a wrap report with all the tangible metrics that they can physically see. But you'd be surprised like how important that document is, because it shows, especially in my industry, creator by creator, post by post, what performed, the metrics behind it. And then, it's a ton of strategizing, not only before the campaign, but also afterward, evaluating, okay, why did this olive oil coffee take off? Or why did the It's Time video take off? And giving our POV on that, and even, being critical of our own selves, how we could do things better. I think, as you mentioned, there's tons of different software out there that you can tap into and use, especially in the influencer marketing world. And our company in particular does not have its own platform. A trend that we set was we stayed tried and true to that. Years ago, we said we're not building our own platform. We're going to listen to the community and utilize all of the best tech in the space, because not one single tech is one size fits all. So we might tap into something that is a really great, talent vetting tool. And then over here is another great tool for background checks for creators and making sure that they don't have anything defamatory. Yes, on their social channels. So I will leave with the fact that it's not one size fits all, and you kind of have to tap into a little bit of everything to make sure that you're delivering the best results for the client. And then ultimately that brand measurement will show amazing metrics. Influencer marketing should be part of the normal marketing model, everyone. So yeah, I think that's the secret sauce.
Thank you for that. And Marissa, we didn't ask you, but how does data weigh into your strategy when it comes to these types of things?
Yeah, I would say with measurement and data, we of course measure all the same things that most people do, right? We have our brand metrics, we have our, how many trips are we driving, so the real performance metrics as well. But it kind of goes back to what Jake was saying in terms of being asked, like, oh great, the social campaign or this thing that you're doing, or tapping into this culturally relevant fandom. How many trips is that going to drive to the store? Well, you can't really determine that. And so what we do have access to is 100 million loyalty members between 7-Eleven and our 7 Rewards program, and Speedway and our Speedy Rewards programs. And from that, we also have a community of about 300,000 members who are part of what we call the Brain Freeze Collective. And this is our proprietary research panel. So we can tap into them to really understand what they're thinking, how they're behaving. And what we have seen from that is that our customers who are interested in these trends and in these fandoms, they spend more money in our stores. And in some cases, they spend significantly more money in our stores. And so, yes, that's correlation, but it also says we're tapping into the right fandoms for our top customers, for the people who really spend with us. We're engaging with them in the right ways. And so then it just becomes, this kind of like flywheel of continuing to engage them and seeing the activity that they're bringing back into the store. And so that's really how we've been able to use the data that we do have to say we know this is working.
You can't underestimate the value of being curious and simply asking your members or customers, how did this make you feel?
They have a lot of thoughts.
They have a ton of thoughts.
They're not
a ton of thoughts. It leads to everything from elevated advertising to new products or changes in experience. And I love the quality and quant just as much as the listening pieces. And then what that should do is put you out in the field. Mm-hmm. And even today, our creative team is in gym, just spending time, not ideating, but just listening and looking to develop out creative.
So we have time for one real question, then one fun question, and then I want to open it up and give the audience a few moments for questions. So the last real question was: if there's one piece of advice you can give to marketers who are trying to stop chasing trends and start leading them, what would it be? Go down the list for this one, or whoever has a queued up answer.
I'm happy to start. I think it goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier. I think it's about making sure your insights and your strategy are really solid, and then being really consistent and committed to that strategy. We posted pictures of cars for over a year, and I will tell you, there's no shortage of questions internally about why are we posting a car and not a Big Gulp or a Slurpee, or shouldn't we add product in there? Shouldn't we be showing product? It's our social media account, and we stuck by it. It was hard, but trends don't actually happen overnight. We see them happen overnight, so we think people became famous overnight, but the reality is that person has been playing the guitar their whole life. They've been working hard. They've been auditioning, and same with trends. That they've been out there. It just takes that one opportunity in that moment for it to get picked up to become a trend, but it didn't really happen overnight. So it's that commitment that can be really hard. You feel like it's not working, so it's been a week and it hasn't picked up traction, and you're like, well, this isn't working, but it doesn't really work that way. So I think it's about making sure, as long as your insights and your strategy are sound and firm, it's about that commitment.
Great. What else?
I was just going to simply say listen more and react less, which I think kind of sums up what you were saying. Simple as that.
Yeah,
Well, that was more succinct.
I do think that you have to be in it. If we're in, at least our team, if we're in our four walls of an office and not walking the gym, we don't see collaboration opportunities. If we're not paying attention to what's happening first with our members and their experience, and one of the key pieces, which I love, the question for us has always been, how do you take a global brand and just kind of not lord over and say, this is what you should do? Like, we have 150 franchise locations domestically and another 500 internationally. And how do you, in your 60th anniversary, bridge that gap? And the one thing that's pretty consistent is people showing progress on social. And so we started establishing, it's super trivial, but Flex Friday, right? But we set up a photo booth in location and let them show off if they want to. By that, we're showing off a community's location, because that Gold's Gym is their Gold's Gym, and it doesn't always have to be about the iconic Venice location. And they get to see themselves. We're a platform instead of being the brand, and we get to make them a part of it, and marketing should be participatory.
And Motivation Monday and Hump Day Wednesday. I know. Great. And it's very similar for us too, right? Because we just had our 64th anniversary last year as a brand, right? And one of the things we always talk about is we don't want to just be a value brand. We want to be a brand with values. And how do you do that and can make that emotional connection with your guest or with your customer? Because at the end of the day, empathy is all about those human connections and sharing that shared value set. And if you can tap into what people care about and what matters to them, it's just, again, going back to everything Marcus said this morning, you can build that relationship with them in a way. So, all right, here's my rapid fire fun question, and then we'll open up to the audience. So, what is the most overrated trend?
There's so many of them.
Generative
I feel like that
AI.
should be an audience question. What does everybody think is the most overrated trend? I think the most overrated trend is when brands just want to go let's do get ready with me videos or a day in the life. Just tapping into the always on trends isn't that in itself is cringeworthy.
Yeah, because you're after the fact of this. You need to be on the upswing of it versus
Correct.
jumping on later.
Yes.
I was just thinking about get ready with me. Like
Sorry.
But it kind of blends into it. And when we were prepping, I kind of threw out AI. Not that I'm not a massive believer in AI and its ability to excel, and we haven't seen anything like this generationally move this quickly. But in some applications, it feels disingenuous. And the entire internet in and of itself is built to bring things to average. So you can put something out that's extremely exceptional and it goes viral and you're consistent with it and your audience is growing at a high velocity. And then eventually you like start to pick up and say, okay, well, I'm going to start a YouTube channel and I'm going to follow this creator's piece. And then all of a sudden that creator that started it starts to see their views drop because the algorithm is picking somebody else up. And before long, it brings you to average. And so I think to your point is setting a baseline on what is easy and a low level entry point instead of going back to those emotional moments, right? And why your brand matters, but more importantly matters to the audience so they can see themselves and feel seen. When I think of Chili's, I think of the first time I had one of those hamburgers. When I think of 7-Eleven, I think about the first time I did a skate trick and we went and celebrated with Slurpee. So, and I stays at Motel 6, across the Southeast when I was playing travel ball. So all of these things play into not just the product, but the moments that the brand creates. And it's very easy, if we're going to say AI, that could easily become an element or a low barrier to entry to bring your brand to average.
Yeah, and Jake now has to drink an extra margarita at happy hour because we were going to try to get to this entire panel without saying AI.
That was also my bet, the over-under. And so luckily I bet on myself.
Yeah, excellent. Perfect. Yeah.
I mean, I think just adding a little bit to what you were saying, it varies by brand, right? Because it really has to be the brands have to be authentically part of a trend, or it just goes wrong. And so I think that means different things for different brands, but it takes really, again, understanding who you are as a brand and the role you play in your brand fans' lives to make that connection.
Yeah, you've been very clear on your brand purpose. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. We have a few minutes for questions, I believe. Okay, cool. Any questions from the audience? We got one up front.
Hi, sorry. Hi, I'm David. I run an influencer marketing agency. My question to you is, like, when brands see that creators are forcing, or when brands have a prop or a trend that's being forced, and then they get backlash on social media, but that creates engagement, views, and comments, does a brand see it as a win as well, or how do you view it as a brand or your client?
Was anybody at the sports summit when the Mavericks guy was talking? Yeah. What did he say? No news is good news, or it's better to be in the news than not in the news, and so irrelevancy and not being talked about is probably worse than negative. But I'll also let our experts answer that.
So I will tell you that my PR colleague does not believe that all news is good news.
Nor do I.
She's very clear with me on that. And thank God for her, we balance each other really well, because being in social, I'm like, no, we have to continue to push the envelope, do more, be crazy. I would say... we try to mitigate that, right, by really looking for, first of all, influencers and creators who already love our brand far before we work with them, and are already demonstrating that. And then we do have a pitch back model, so we have them brief back to us. So we really understand what they're going to do, and we really do everything we can to make sure it's going to come across as authentic. Yes, there are times where it doesn't work as planned, or you get some backlash from a comment perspective. For us, we learn from that. I mean, that's the win, right? Is that we go, okay, what went wrong here? Why did this not go the way we planned? And how can we make sure that we change that in the future or approach it differently? I would say the negative comments are not the win for sure. It's we don't want that. We want our our brand fans to be engaging with us in a positive way. But it's the learning for us that's positive. And the reality is it says you're taking risks when that does happen. And we have to take those risks to get to the positive. And so it is going to happen. But I think it's just then what do we do with it?
Yeah, our social and influencer team does a really good job on the criteria aspects and putting that infrastructure around, because what you don't want is people flying and saying, well, that person doesn't even work out at a Gold's Gym, right? Like, and if they're not working out there, and it could be because of location, it could be that if it's somebody that we want to build a relationship with and there isn't a location there, that we work out an opportunity, because everybody wants to work out in Venice, to come out and work out in Venice. So how do you kind of create that in a way? I'm worried that authenticity or authentic becomes a buzzword too much and too heavy, and that's the one thing that we want trend that we want to drop. But ultimately, the realism behind it, because we get approached a lot, because the gymfluential community, is what we'll call it, is becoming the next food community, and people wanting to showcase food and travel, and they see our brand, they know that it's recognizable, and hey, let's work out a partnership. And not all of those things work. So we just heavily rely on, similar to what you have, is kind of a work back plan of, okay, it's great you want to work with us. How do you want to work with us? What do you want to do? If there's a gym there or not, like, what's your history? What do you know about us? Those types of pieces, to make sure that some of those comments don't come in and start to flame.
Great. We got one in the back.
Hi, I work for American Airlines, and my question is, so if creating trends is a macro level initiative, how do you balance out the personalization in this one-to-one approach that a lot of big brands are leaning into?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. We work with a ton of different brands, like as I mentioned, across different verticals, some being airlines, some being financial services. And we are seeing that a huge trend is brands wanting to work with a group of creators in an always on approach because of that, because you do get the personalization. It might be a credit card that has, travel rewards, dining, you name it. And we take that group of creators and we find pockets of creators within that group that personalize that dedicated category because they are authentic fans of the brand. So I think that helps lend itself to be a more personalized approach for a brand. And then also, to the last question, helps cut through the comment section of negativity, because you'll have less of that, because people who are responding are already engaging with either that creator or that brand organically, and they have a positive affinity for it.
We also are getting pretty niche in terms of the fandoms that we tap into. We are launching in a couple of months a Japanese golf collection. I don't think it gets more niche than Japanese golf. I'm just saying. But that still has broad applicability because people find interest in it. Even if you've never been to Japan or you don't play golf, it's still going to be a badass collection and you're still going to think it's cool, right? And so we're tapping into these niche fandoms, but doing it in a way that's scalable versus really starting mass, right? And trying to kind of narrow that in. So that's been our approach. I mean, we also, of course, approach personalization through other channels to really get to that more one-on-one connection. And so you may see, the same campaign across all the channels that we do. And some it's going to be broader reach, and others it's going to be much more personalized in terms of how we're connecting with that customer one-on-one. So hopefully that answers the question.
I think context is so important, particularly from our industry. From a brand standpoint, when people generally think of Golds, they think of Arnold, right? And they think of pumping iron. That is great in theory, but then there are a lot of people that when they're thinking about in November, December, and January their fitness journey and they want to start, they will say, well, I can't start there. That's a place that I have to graduate to. And so we have been very careful, again, going back to audiences seeing themselves and feeling seen, when we work with influencers, when we work with creators, when we develop out content, particularly per platform, how we are speaking to people who are starting their journey and how we can be supportive of that, regardless of what their audience following is. And when we work with creators, where are you in your fitness journey? It's very easy to find those people who are, squatting and benching serious weights and preparing for Olympia or the Arnold Classic, as opposed to, listen, I just want to run a 5K, man. And so how we set up those things to showcase the continuum of people across their fitness journey and make strength more accessible to people who are considering it.
Awesome. I think we're at time, but just to kind of bring this to a close, I think what we've really talked about today is the need to listen to your customers and understand where they're at, to find something that is, we're not using the word authentic, we're using the word real, but that mirrors back to the purpose of your brand and is truly rooted in your brand. And 3, can you do it in a unique and ownable way that makes sense for you that no one else can do? So I think that's sort of the secret sauce, if I can sum everything up from our conversation today, of kind of how to do this and be a trend setter, not a trend chaser.
Thank you, guys.